I'm an old retired superintendent from northern Kentucky, and I stayed retired for a little while. My wife and I retired the same day. She was a teacher. After a few months, I was telling Shauna and Valerie, she sat me down and said, "You're going to have to find a job. You're driving me crazy." So at the time, John Akers, who is the executive director of the Center for School Safety, called me about that time. I think the premonition there, and he said, "Why don't you come back and work for me?" So I said, "When do I start?" You know, so I did, and the office for KCSS was at the Kentucky School Board Association. So that's where I went to work every day, and then after a couple of years there, Mike Oder, who was the superintendent search consultant that I think did the last search here in Johnson County, he retired. So he came in with a big stack of manuals one day and put it on the desk. I said, "What's that, Mike?" He says, "Well, you're the new superintendent search consultant in addition to your job." I said, "Is that your decision or someone else's decision?" He said, "No, they wanted me to ask if you would do that." So I do that. And I also did the facility planning. Some of you probably recognize me. I was here for 7 or 8 days last year doing your facility plan, or helping them do this facility plan. So got a lot of things on the table. I'm going to be giving up the Safe Schools part after 5 years in about 6-8 weeks, something like that. So wife says, "You almost have gotten too much going on." So there's between the facility plans and the superintendent searches this past year, I was gone a lot. So it's a little bit too much for her and me. So we're going to give up a little bit. But that's my history. Sort of a strange process. This year, I've already got four districts that were starting to search already. This is very early in the school year for that to happen. But strange things are happening now with people retiring at strange times. So the pension part of the thing that's so important to everybody, it's raised a lot of questions where people are being proactive and want to get in the retirement system before anything strange could happen. So it is what it is. So you are what school?
I'm at Flag Gap Elementary. I'm the principal there.
That's right. I remember. And your name is?
My name's Chris Pierce. I've been a teacher's aide. I've been a custodian. I've been a resource center director. I've been a teacher, and now a principal.
You've done it all.
And a coach.
And a coach.
He said cook.
And a fine principal he is.
All right, yeah.
My name is Carrie Burt. I'm an occupational therapist.
Okay.
So I serve the entire district.
My name's Jeanette Cantrell, and I'm a teacher at W.R. Castle Elementary.
Okay.
I'm Missy Davis, and I'm also a teacher at Johnson County Middle School.
Okay.
I'm Felicia Woody, and I guess I'm the parent.
You're the parent?
Yeah, I'm the CEO of the local credit union.
Okay. Well, good. And Bob will be here in a maybe.
Yeah, we KEDC this year. You came up to Ashland KEDC.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I've been so many places. Sometimes I forget who I've seen in what city.
Steve Kramer introduced us there.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, Steve and I have become friends here recently. I did the Kenton County search where Henry Webb got that job, and then that opened up Floyd County, so I'm doing the Floyd County search, and they need an interim, so I called Mr. Trimble, and he said yes.
That's really neat, I think.
Steve's a good man.
He is. He is.
Time frame wise, we're not in a position where we would need to look towards an interim.
That is my understanding from Mr. Hutchison.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can answer any of these questions, or he can, you know, as we go along. I want this to be as informal as possible. I'm not doing the Johnson County search, obviously. I'm just here to train the committee on what the committee does according to the law. So this is going to be a one and done for me. I just want to make sure that we that everybody on this committee knows what the law says, what you can and cannot do, things of that nature. So it's my understanding that, you know, at this point of the year, some districts decide to do an interim and postpone the search till a later time of the year, other districts don't. Breathitt County is doing their search at this time also.
It's Breathitt County, they lost theirs to
Paintsville.
Paintsville. That's,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's Brenton's brother-in-law.
Brenton's brother-in-law, and he hadn't been in Breathitt County very long, had he?
Couple of years.
Oh, okay, was it that long?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was,
But he's hired as an interim at this point.
True, that's right.
yeah, that was sort of a different kind of announcement I read there, that he's gonna be an interim, but have a chance to get the permanent
Yes,
job or something.
yeah. It's almost like they're gonna test the waters.
Hey, well, I was thinking, that sounds like a 6-month interview to me.
You better do well.
I don't know if I could get hired during a 6-month interview.
That's pretty wild risk, isn't it? Leave a superintendent job to
Just being in.
try out for one.
Yeah.
It is.
But I think he had a child already in the system.
Oh, does
Yes, I think so.
He
Okay.
does. He does.
Yeah, and
Indeed.
he was state manager at Breathitt, and I'm sure that was a challenging position. You've got several bosses, you got the board, and you also have KDE as your boss, so, when you're at Breathitt, so until they release Breathitt from there.
So Floyd County has been released, or they have, weren't they under that same deal?
Oh, yeah, but
That was years ago.
that's
They
been several
were,
years
yeah.
now, but, no, they were in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been several years that they've been released. I don't know when that was.
Does Breathitt County have a timeline, like when they expect to announce?
Tim Eaton is doing that search, so I'm not sure
Norris Hudson.
about exactly what they are.
There he is,
The South Pole.
the South Pole.
You have one down here.
Thanks.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good.
I got a ice cream at your McDonald's next door.
I thought you were gonna tell me you had one for me here. It's gonna make you my new best
And
friend.
they made me pay full price. I mean, what's the deal?
That's the way we like it. Ladies.
Hello there.
You too.
We had just finished with the introduction, so we got that out of the way. And I was explaining to them what's going to happen tonight. So, again, we want this to be as informal as possible. If you have questions that any of us could answer, particularly me, just go ahead and shoot those out. I don't want this thing to be cumbersome where, you know, it's really rigid. So, your first handout I'm going to give you delineates the responsibilities and the roles, pick this up out of your packet, between the screening committee and the Board of Education. First of all, go down to the second paragraph, and this is the statute that dictates how you got here as a member of this committee. The screening committee will be composed of 2 teachers elected by the teachers, 1 board member appointed by the board chair, 1 principal selected by the principals, 1 parent selected by the presidents of the PTAs of the district, and 1 classified member elected by the classified employees. And that was a result of the Reform Act of the early 90s. Prior to that, if someone applied for superintendent, they were hired just like every other employee of the district. You just apply for the job, the board would interview you, and then they would make a decision. So this committee was set up as a result of the Educational Reform Act to make a broad-based committee that would make recommendations to the Board of Education. And that is the function of the search committee, is to look at applications, determine the method that you would like to make recommendations to the committee. Bob, do you know the number of applicants that the board wants to see, or do you want to address that? Or usually in a search, the board decides how many applicants that should be taken from the search committee to the board.
I think the board's pretty much said only want to hire somebody from within.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're willing to look at all the applicants from within our district. whether it's 1 or 10.
Okay,
They'd like for the committee to look at all of them.
okay. The law also says that if you look down to the last paragraph before it goes to board responsibility, the responsibility of hiring the superintendent rests with the Board of Education. Probably 95% of the time, boards of education hire the superintendent from the list submitted by the screening committee. Not always. I had one this year where that didn't occur, but there were some extenuating circumstances there. So this committee does not choose the superintendent. Superintendent is chosen by the Board of Education after the process is completed by the screening committee. Screening committee, you will look at all the applications, submit your list of recommended candidates to the Board of Education. At that point, you're dismissed from your duties in this process. Okay?
Can I make a point of clarification?
Yes, go ahead.
If somebody outside of our district does apply and they're wowing everybody, the board would like to see that as well. Based on the information that we've looked at in the past, especially under these type of timelines, we're just under the thought process that we probably wouldn't get any from outside since people are usually hired such a short notice. But any qualified applicant, I think, should be looked at.
Okay.
And when I said within the system, I meant because I seriously doubt that we'll have anybody from outside.
Okay.
But if we do and they're qualified and everybody's wowed, I think the board will look at that as well.
Okay. Okay. The board responsibilities, and I think that's fairly self-explanatory. They're in charge of making sure this screening committee occurred on a timely basis. They are establishing the timeline which they have posted position with KDE and have an ending date for the application process. The criteria, I don't know that that's been developed. I think we could probably gather that in just a discussion from Mr. Hutchison, what the type of applicants that they would like to see recommended to them. I don't know if you're prepared at this time, Bob, to just give your viewpoint on that, the criteria of the applicants that you would like to see brought before the board.
I think when the board discussed it, we're looking at people that are, first of all, have their certification to be
Yeah,
superintendent.
and we're going to be discussing the basic qualifications.
And people that have had leadership positions.
Okay.
Not necessarily superintendent, but anybody that's been in a leadership role that have led a school or a large group of people versus somebody just might have been an athletic director.
Okay.
So that's what they're looking at. Plus, some of their accomplishments during their work term, what they've done to move the system they've worked with ahead,
Okay.
and how their efforts have affected the well-being of the students long term.
Okay. All right. Very good. Moving on down, number 5, the position has been advertised. Confidentiality is something that we really impress upon our committees that we work with. The confidentiality of the applicant is, we think, paramount. At the end of the posting period, you'll have access to a lot of information at your disposal. You may have 5 applicants, you may have 15, you may have 20 applicants. It's tough to determine at this time. But the people applying for the position need to have a sense from the committee that their confidentiality is going to be guarded. Because if you have people from outside the district that's applied for this position, you can imagine if the word gets back to their home district that they've applied for another district, sometimes it establishes a wall between that applicant and their clientele in that district. So you will be asked repeatedly, I'm sure, by people you work with, people in the community, who has applied for the position. I would say that it is your viewpoint and the viewpoint of the school district that you're not at liberty to share that. I have had people go to very inventive ways trying to get people to disclose who's applied for the position. In the districts I have completed searches, I always talk to the committee that one of the most inventive methods that people will use is that they will ask the spouse of the committee member. Because they know that the districts that I work with, they signed a confidentiality agreement, but their spouse didn't, and oftentimes they will use that. So I wouldn't share any information like that with anyone because it can cause a lot of problems with people that apply for the position, and even within your own district. So keep that in mind. Flip over to the second page. And I think all that is self-explanatory, so let's go down to the screening committee responsibilities. Number one, screen all candidates according to the criteria established by the board. You heard Mr. Hutchison give you what was important for the board to see in applicants. People that maybe not so much have been a superintendent, but have shown leadership qualities in positions that they have had. Also, certification. What you don't want, and we'll go over this here in a minute, is to recommend people to the board that aren't fully certified or for some reason or another have a conflict of being a superintendent. We'll go over that in just a minute. Number two, you can employ any reasonable means it chooses to screen candidates. The law is very, very vague when it comes to that. Some districts interview candidates, some districts don't. If you're looking at what the law says you will look at the candidates and make a recommendation. It doesn't say what happens in the middle. And each screening committee decides for themselves how they're going to establish that. Obviously, you cannot financially obligate the board. You can't say that we're gonna pay somebody $300,000 to be our superintendent or something of that nature. That would get you in a little bit of a hot water, I would think. The confidentiality again is mentioned, and you can't be paid for your service on this committee. So, do you have any question that may arise on what the duties of the committee are and how that's different from the board, or any question at this point that something I said that raised a question in your mind? Okay, requirements of superintendent. To get out that other sheet, it's on the back page of that sheet. The requirements, they have to be certified, and you can go to the EPSB website and see if they're certified. Now, your applicants should provide that for you. If they don't have, if you're going through their file that they submit and they don't have a certificate that is current, if you're considering that person to be recommended on to the Board of Education, you need to contact that person to make sure that they just didn't make a mistake. Sometimes applicants will try to slip things in there. They may be in training to be a superintendent, but they have not completed that yet. The law says that on July 1, when they are, whenever, August 1 or whenever they will take office here, that they have to be fully certified. Not close, not near, because you never know when things are going to happen. Strange things happen, litigation and things of that nature. And you want to make sure the district is covered. The board does also, that they are fully certified on the minute that they take over the job. Not close, but they are fully certified. But you can, if that is missing in their file, you can go to the EPSB website and look, type their name in and see if they are. But if it was me, I would go ahead and request a current certification that they've been issued by EPSB and put that in their file. Also, superintendents, have to agree to be, if they're an interim or intern superintendent, they have to be trained within it. 1 year, they can't be a director or officer of a bank, trust company, savings and loan, or whatever the school has on deposit. So you can't hire your bank president, whoever has has a depository here for Johnson County Schools. I think that's self-explanatory. You have to live in the district. That's not a big deal here in Johnson County. It was up my way. The superintendent of a district on the Ohio River actually never did move from Cincinnati across the river. Even though he was superintendent 7 or 8 years, he kept telling them he was, he never did. And it became a little bit of an issue later on. The superintendent should be devoted exclusively to the duties of the office. And in other words, I said this can't be a part-time job for them. Okay, so those basically are the duties, responsibilities of a superintendent. All that is very self-explanatory for you people that's been into the business. And any questions about any of that? Your meetings are going to be open to the public. Okay, there are some instances where you will go into closed session. Okay, the meeting that we're having right now is general information. Anytime you have general information, you must treat it just like a special board meeting. You must post it on the district website. You have to provide 24 hours prior notice. You need to notify the media. All of that, just like the Board of Education does when they have a special meeting. Now, what is going to be discussed in that meeting, if it's of a general nature, like qualifications for the job, criteria, things of that nature, that's not specific to one person, then you would remain in open session. When you go into closed session is when you're going to be discussing specific applicants and their attributes, okay? That's when you would go into closed session. The chair of the committee, and we'll get to that here in a minute because you do have to have a chair according to the law, would ask for a motion to go into executive session of KRS 61.810 Section F, which is the one that deals with personnel. And you would go into that session. Just remember, you cannot take any action while you're in closed session. So at the end of the whole process, when you are going to recommend people to the board, you cannot do that in closed session. You can do that, you have to do that in open session, but you will give them code numbers instead of real names. Okay? And that suffices to the law. And then when you meet with the board, then they will go into into closed session to get the real names of the applicants. Okay? So everything that's of a general nature, stay in open session. Everything specific to the applicants, you are entitled to stay in closed session.
Now, just for my own clarification,
Sure.
if recommendations of a person who has never held a superintendent's job, that they have the 1 year, if hired, to be under an internship, is that true?
Yeah, if the board hires a superintendent that's never been a superintendent, then that is not something that you need to be concerned about. That is something that the board will say. Now, as you know, if you've never been a superintendent, you have to go through the internship, which is, they already know that. It's 1 year of going through the procedure with KDE.
Yes, okay, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry, this committee won't have to worry about that. You just need to
No, this
make
is
sure
just
that they're
for my own-
certified.
Yeah, okay.
And no one goes, well, I did, that was before, I went through that training as a deputy superintendent once until they decided they didn't want to do that anymore. It wasn't because of me. But they reserved that for, they had so many superintendent's openings, you know, we're having about 30 a year now, that the classes were so big they couldn't take on assistant superintendents and deputy superintendents. But I was fortunate enough when I was hired as superintendent, I already had that year behind me. They let me do it as an assistant. But And that was really great for me, because your first year superintendent, there's a lot to do. You're out of the district a whole lot during that training, so, good question. Any other questions?
Mr. Martin, can I make a statement?
You may.
When you go into closed session, because it is a special meeting, that has to be on the agenda. You can't just have a meeting and decide to do that. So it has to be up front.
Yeah, there has to be, good point, Valerie, there has to be an agenda posted, just like any other board meeting, and that has to be on that agenda. I'm glad you brought that up. Like you says, it can't be, well, let's go on and do the next meeting during tonight. We need to go into the executive session to do that. You can't.
You would just have to schedule another meeting.
You would have to schedule another meeting, 24 hours notice, post the agenda. The agenda says go into closed session to discuss personnel.
And what's on the agenda is the only thing. You can't add items.
Yeah, since all of your meetings will qualify as special meetings, you have to stick to the agenda. You can't bring up other things. I don't know what you would be talking about. But
We only have one
it's
person.
not like a Board of Education that could talk about various things. I don't know what else you could be talking about, but anyway, all good points. Okay, so any questions about the Open Meetings Act? The reasons for going into closed session, I put in bold and italicized there of the one that you would use for the discussions of hearings that might lead to the appointment, discipline, or dismissal of an employee, member, or student without restricting the right and all that stuff, okay? And the board chair would state that, okay? You have to provide minutes, just like the Board of Education does, okay? They have to be filed with Valerie or someone at the completion of your work here, and that is kept on file in case someone ever wanted to see it. Any questions about that?
When we do the meeting and we put on the agenda to have a closed session to go through the applicants and that type of thing, I guess. When we come out, can we come out of closed session and then do the recommendation to the board of that same meeting if it's on the agenda?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Now, what I alluded to earlier about the code numbers is that instead of people's names, you can assign code numbers, and then when you meet with the board, then that board would go into closed session to get the real names of the code numbers. But that's all been approved by the Attorney General. And just remember, you can't go home out of closed session. You gotta come back to open session to have adjournment and all of those things. Valerie knows all that. Just ask Valerie about procedures. It's the exact same procedures as a board meeting. Okay. Committee work, things that are required in the law. And I think I've mentioned some of these. You need to elect a chair. That's simple. Does someone want to be chair? Do you want to nominate somebody? Just have a vote. Make sure someone takes minutes during the meeting and has a record of the vote for every motion. Okay? You need a motion to open the meeting. You need a motion to close the meeting. You need a motion for everything else that takes place during the meeting. The election of the chair, motion, second, vote. Okay?
4-H.
4-H.
Starts in
Just
4th
like
grade.
your site bases and everything else, there needs to be a motion and an action taken for everything. So minutes taken. The criteria, I think, is what Mr. Hutchison alluded to earlier. Keep in mind that if you stray too far from that, you need to come back to that criteria. Oftentimes, committees get a little astray from what the board wants in a superintendent. And when I'm working with those committees, we bring them back to the middle. And remember, what the board says is what's important to them. And our goal is to provide X number of candidates that have the criteria that the board wants. So anybody that has, if I heard Mr. Hutchison right, any candidate inside or outside the district that is strong in the criteria that he said the board is looking for would be considered. Now, you may know some skeletons in a closet about a person, and the committee doesn't feel comfortable with recommending a person, and that's perfectly agreeable.
But they could still be hired without.
They could be hired by the Board of Education, yes it is. I would, if it, I think it would help you if you had a rating process where it's not completely subjective when you go through. If the committee wants to take time to have 4 or 5 rating scales, not rating scales, just criteria for a rating scale, where you could look at the applicant's files and have a number assigned to the quality of that. Background, leadership roles, focus on academic as well as other, you could come up with those type of qualities that you would like to see in a superintendent. I would have like a 1 through 5 or something of that nature where it is not a subjective number. It's something based on your experience in this district where you would assign a number to the quality of that applicant. I think that gives you some legitimacy in your own mind about where the separation would be in the candidates you're going to recommend to the board. That oftentimes when I work with districts, it becomes a natural separation between the candidates. That there may be 4 or 5 candidates that are really, really good, and then there's a drop off and you have 4 or 5 that's not really good. If you have a rating scale that backs your feeling up on that, I think that quantifies what you may be thinking already. So I would have a scale that you might want to talk about before you get too far into this. When's a application closed by?
29th.
The 29th. So
Saturday.
Today's the 17th. So if you wanted to have a meeting or not between now and then, you could possibly do that if you want to develop a scale as a group. Just throw it out there. There's nothing required that says you have to do that. I always like to have something a little bit more objective that you can go back to. And determine the number of qualified recommendations. I think Mr. Hutchinson said that there's no specific number that they would like to see the number that the committee just recommends that they're strong candidates. Okay.
Mr. Martin, the last time we went through this, it was a longer process, but we did use the rating scale, and that seemed to really help us. We set up certain criteria, and then we rated that each time. And then we had specific ones that we were charged with to make contact with and ask questions.
On that, the rating scales, that's something we still have?
I don't know. I was sitting here thinking that we might be able to find
Because
it.
that was a 1 through 3 or 1 through 5?
I think it was 1 through 3.
Okay.
I'll look through my notes and see.
Yeah,
what
I think it was
I
too.
can find. I don't think it would be any more. I'll see what I can find.
Okay.
The law is very vague when it comes to this process, and Attorney General's opinions have indicated that we at KSBA cannot dictate too many things to be done at the district level, that the law was non-specific for a reason. It was not done out of negligence. It was done that there be local control over this process. We're past the stage of the committee selection. That's usually a little controversial in some districts, who qualifies as a teacher and who's allowed to vote and things of that nature. But we've already passed that because we have the selection completed by the committee members. So once you get that date, who's going to be collecting the applications, Valerie? That would be you.
They're done online.
Okay.
So-
And you're the contact person or Bob?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're going to be fielding them, and in the meantime, they'll be electing a chairperson, and they need to schedule a meeting shortly thereafter of when that closing date is, wouldn't they? And then you're going to provide on paper, or how do they?
We will print them out and have them, and I can print out 1 or I can print out 6. However y'all.
Okay, we probably need to discuss how you want them. Keep in mind that when you use paper, there's always a chance if you're disorganized like me, that you leave paper laying around. So guard that, what she's going to give you very, very carefully to guard the confidentiality of the applicant. So do you want to have one for the whole committee, or do you want to have one for each applicant, for each member of the committee?
I think I'd like to have one for each member of the committee, for each applicant, to where we can all look at
It would go faster.
the same applicant at the same time.
Okay. So Valerie, I think I hear so that if you have 10 applicants, that they would like each member of the committee would like to have a copy of all 10 applicants. Okay. When you have a meeting to elect a chairperson and any other household items that you would want to take care of, then you would set that up with Valerie, how you're going to receive, when you're going to receive. You've got a pretty tight time frame there. So you would have the chairperson meet with Valerie, maybe pick up the applications, have them distributed, have the meeting the next night or 2 nights later or whatever, with your knowledge of going through that. If you have 10 applications, it's going to take you a while to go through all those things, and read reference letters and things of that nature. So your first real meeting as a committee, elect a chair, and decide, have an agenda item of the procedures that you all would like to receive the applications, anything else that you would want.
So technically, that's on the agenda for today. So does that have to be done today, if it's on the agenda?
No, it doesn't have to be.
Now, you can skip anything, you just
Yeah.
can't add
Oh,
anything.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that is a very good question.
Question on the applicants.
Yes, sir.
Would we be better suited to wait until all applicants are in and hand them off to people, or review those if we meet before the 29th, or when we meet before the 29th? Will we be able to review what we have thus far?
You could.
Because technically, we gotta
From
wait
my
till the
experience, Bob, people wait till the last minute. Now,
Yeah.
that's not with everyone, but usually you will double your applicants in the last 2 days.
Right.
But there's nothing says you could not meet earlier
Mhm.
to see what has been submitted. And that would lessen the time crunch for the
And
committee.
Just to review the ones that we have in, and then the other question that I have is, 29th is the closing day for application. Is it, since it's not a business day, is it noon? Is it 5 o'clock on the 28th? Is it midnight on the 29th?
Well, now Valerie,
It is midnight on the 29th. That is what's on our district website for employment.
Okay.
11:59 p.m.
okay.
So, Saturday night, July, nothing, we could have a meeting at 12:01.
Yes, technically.
Which is the next day.
We do have some applications in at this time.
Approximately how many?
Okay.
3?
Third.
So,
You can meet any time between now and whenever
okay.
and start reviewing those applications, yes.
Okay.
There's nothing in the law that says you cannot do that. Usually, in most of the searches, they just wait till the end, but the time frame is a lot more out in the future.
And let's say we have 10 applicants, and let's say we only want to personally interview 2
That's
that we
perfectly
don't
fine.
know,
Yeah.
but we know the other 8.
Mhm.
So why do we want to interview the other 8 since we already know them, if everybody's in agreement?
Are you
Or-
talking about the committee interviewing or the
Yes.
Board of Education?
Committee.
Okay. If the committee does choose to interview people, to make it a level playing field, I would use one of these meetings that you're going to have between now and then to come up with your questions that you can ask each candidate to make it a level playing field. You don't want to penalize somebody or give somebody a free pass because of who or what they are. So if you're going to interview candidates as a committee, if you're going to interview 2 or 3, I would advise to make sure that the applicants get the same questions, so
Yeah.
they would.
Now, the last couple of times that I've been fortunate enough to participate with this, we as a committee did not interview.
Okay.
If I recall, we went strictly by the resumes and did reference checks, got through some of that type of stuff for the board, and then made our recommendation from that and let them do the interview because they're the ones actually doing the hiring, and it actually takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, it is, it does take up time. Different districts, committees do it different ways. You can or cannot. You know, there's nothing in the law that either encourages you to interview nor discourages you to interview. So it would be a decision of the committee, because the law says the committee can decide what type of process they use to make the recommendations that they're going to send to the board. So it's all over the place what districts do. Some do the very, very minimum, and some do an elaborate system of at Kenton County, where I just completed, we had 11 current superintendents that applied for that position, so it was a drawn out process.
They're my opinion, deep.
Yeah, so, any other questions? Basically, that's what the law says. And you know, it'd just be my recommendation to make it as objective as possible of people inside and outside the district, the questions that you ask them if you are going to ask questions, the criteria that you're looking for in an applicant. You may want to take some time to look at, maybe make a list of 4 or 5 things that you'll be looking for in an application, based on the criteria that Mr. Hutchison said. You don't want to look at an applicant and say, well, he's never been a coach. You know, I need a coach. You know, if that's important to the board, you would have known that, but it's probably not as important to the board as the leadership of a school or school district or a program within a school district. So I would sit here if you wanted to and make a list of 3 or 4 or 5 things that you're going to be looking for. If you decide to meet before the expiration of the application deadline, if Shauna said you have 3, you could look at 3 your next meeting if you wanted to, but you need to know what you're looking for.
On the another question,
Yes.
please, is on future meetings, there are public meetings, correct?
They're public meetings, yes.
How much notice do we need?
24 hours.
24 hours.
Just like a special board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's the same. Needs to be posted, media informed, just like a special board.
There's no limit of the time of the closed session, though, during that meeting, is there?
No,
You don't have to report.
no, just when you're finished with what you said you're going into the closed session for, whether that's 10 minutes or 3 hours, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you take a motion to come out of closed session, back into open session, and then a motion of any action after that. There may or may not be action. And then a motion to go home, to adjourn the meeting. Can't adjourn anything out of closed session, can't take any action in closed session. Any other, all good questions?
Do we have a timeline as to when our recommendations need to be submitted to the board?
Yeah, Bob, when does the board need to know?
Well, this is a very unique situation, and we did have a couple choices as a board. We could have, one, hired an interim to take us through the year for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, or expedite the process, do it thoroughly, and/or as thoroughly as we can. School starting on August the 2nd, rather than,
School actually starts on the 3rd. Opening day for
Okay.
pictures on the 2nd.
so on the 2nd, I would like, it would be the wish of the board, I think, to have the new superintendent greet everybody on the opening day so that we can thank Mr. Salyer for his services, and then maybe the new individual can kick off, because if we don't do it expediently, we're going to have an interim, and I find it to be very disruptive, and especially if it's just even for a month. It throws everybody behind, that's a little bit of limbo, and so we really...
So we'd like to have this process done by the 30th.
Well, I figure 12:01 Sunday morning.
This man never sleeps, that's what he's telling us.
That's going to be the wish of this outfit here, is when you all want to make that decision, but the board will have a special called meeting sometime on the 31st or the 30th, which Sundays are not usually a good day for meetings, but we might do that
Or
on
even
Sunday.
August 1st, couldn't you have a special call meeting on August 1st?
Yeah, we can have a special call meeting anytime. But I think the sooner that we get it out, in case there's anything that Mr. Salyer needs to transfer, I mean, there's really 24, 48 hours, but I think it would be good for that person to be with Mr. Salyer, even if it's just for a day. 2 days would be best.
What's the official day of Tom's retirement?
July 31st.
July 31st.
So midnight on the 1st, we have to have somebody in place.
You have to have an acting superintendent or a permanent superintendent at all times.
Yes.
So the minute that Mr. Salyer is no longer superintendent, someone has to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that would,
With no action, does that fall to the assistant, or do we, it does not? You have to have
we will
some-
have somebody in place.
Okay.
The board doesn't need to post a vacancy for acting superintendent. They can just hire somebody, even if it's for a half a day.
Okay.
And the other
That's a
thing is,
good to know.
it would be nice, personally, I'd like to meet on the 30th as a board, school board, which is Sunday, because whoever is going to be the superintendent, there'll have to be some type of contract agreed upon between them and the attorney and
You're
the
going to
board.
have to interview these people or not. If you already know them, you don't have to interview.
Not necessarily. We can, I mean, this committee, but the board, unless the committee says, hey, this fellow that came in from New Zealand is top notch. You need to look at this person. We might interview at that point in time, and those interviews will take place probably Sunday evening or very, very early, 5:00 a.m. on Monday.
Sorry,
But-
it'll just be a very long day.
That's right.
Yeah.
But our thought process is, in talking with some of the people in Frankfurt, that we might not get a whole lot of applicants because everybody's been hired already. And the other thought process is you're either going to get people from within your organization that you already know, everybody's worked with them for the last 2 years to 25 years, or you're going to have people that are retired, like Mr. Steve Patino, who went to Floyd County. And if they're retired, you know, I don't know that we'll hire anybody that's retired, because we get a lot of people out there that are qualified and competent that, to me, then you start the process over again in a year or
No,
two.
we need some time here.
So,
But based on everything you're saying too, all the more reason to read as you go, to critique as you go.
correct.
Well,
on
if you're
these
doing a rating
applications.
scale, that really supports. You're
Yeah.
not
So
all
what
over
we need,
the
what we
place.
need to do is probably, see, today's Monday, probably Wednesday, have a meeting and review the applications that we have already.
Mhm.
Probably be
And-
best, what's best.
And, but I don't know that the board at this point in time will be interviewing anybody, unless that person from New Zealand comes along, that has got your all's attention, and y'all recommend them as one of the 2 or 3 or 4 people. And then the other group that we would get as applicants, somebody had mentioned that you would get somebody who wasn't hired, somebody that's not retired, somebody that's just flat out never got hired, that should be an indication of something. Unless they're green and just wanting to try something, but, I think we'll have some good applicants regardless inside or outside the system, but I don't think we'll have a whole lot. Based on the timing of everything.
I'd be surprised if you have as many as 10. I'd be real surprised.
The last 2 days, the track record typically double, you think? So that would put us maybe at 6. So we're,
I'll check daily.
yeah, we're on that list again,
So
so.
can we nominate a chairman today and vote on it?
I would feel better for the district if you waited and did that at a meeting where it's a specific, this was more of an informational meeting rather than an action agenda.
So Wednesday, that could be the first thing.
When you have your next meeting, the first item of the agenda, Valerie, you may have to help them, since you don't have a chair right now, and you're not gonna have a consultant, just put together a little agenda for them where the first action would be election of a chairperson, and you could act as a liaison until that person is nominated.
Can we discuss a meeting date now, though?
Sure, sure.
I guess it'd be the lack of everybody here. I don't think it necessarily has to be 4 or 4:30, does it?
There's no specification.
As long as it's 24 hours, it could be at 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning.
That's true.
Not knowing what everybody's obligations are, whatever suits you. Suits.
I'm free, I'll make time to be here whenever we need to have it.
I'm saying, earlier the better.
I agree. I mean, for me.
Yep.
We do have our retreat Wednesday at WRA.
What time?
It'll be
All day.
8:30 to 3:30.
What time?
8:30 to 3:30.
And
I could get a lunch in there.
how long do you think this meeting would last, our first meeting?
Well, if you're gonna start looking at applications, you have 3 so far, you said?
Yes.
I would dedicate it at least an hour.
Okay, and let me ask this question then. If
First, you gotta go look what you're looking for. You have
Yes.
to have that discussion first
Okay.
before you open up the first application.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're gonna take
And the
15,
ratings.
20 minutes at least to look what you're
Establish a
looking
rating
for.
scale or
But
criteria.
but now, could we not, is this possible to have that rating scale and qualifications or what to be looked at along with the applications in a packet given to them before the meeting?
Does
Could,
the
I
rating
don't know.
scale have to be voted on?
I don't know who's gonna come up with what you're gonna be looking for.
We'll have to have that meeting first.
Hey, that's fine. No, we've got something, I think, in file based on past, and then also, if Val presents something, we can vote on it at the meeting if we accept.
Accept that and then.
Yeah, and then if we don't
Yeah.
like it, we can change it
Sure.
and then vote on it.
Yeah, you can.
That would be, if nothing else, a template or a
Yeah,
guideline.
it's a template to start with.
I'm just looking at trying to turn a 3-hour meeting into an hour.
Oh, I don't think it's gonna be anything 3 hours. I
Yeah.
never have more than an hour and a half with the committee.
And we can meet anywhere?
Yes. They have to post it where it's gonna be.
Okay. What time's your meeting? 8:30?
8:30 to 3.
She gets an hour lunch.
An hour lunch on Wednesday.
Well, technically that crew that travels to Fiesta Place takes that hour and
Yeah, I tell you
45
what.
minutes that you were keeping tied
I
up.
guess what I was thinking, since you have something at 8:30, I was just thinking of something at 8 o'clock. And what happens the first 30 minutes of your meeting?
We're gonna talk and eat some donuts, I do believe.
And I'll supply
Little
more
bit of
donuts.
juice.
But I would, if we could do it at WR,
We can
if that
put
would
it-
save you time.
We could. I've got a classroom next.
Okay. So, but that's just me talking. I'm just trying to.
Hey.
And it's perfectly
I agree with it.
agreeable.
Who
Not
agreed?
opposed to
Okay.
breakfast sandwich either, so.
Okay, I can do that.
Better than a donut.
And then they'll have their 24-hour notice, the press and the public.
That's what we tell them.
Okay.
What if we just do 7:30, be here?
It's up to you, because you're the one that's got the obligation at 8:30, but you might miss out on donuts, but I could bring you donuts and breakfast here.
I can skip
And
the
everybody else.
donuts. could skip the donuts.
How about you, Felicia?
I'm fine. This week I'm fine. I've got an office full. Next week I've got several I don't think it's
So,
I can do whatever on that part,
which
for
is,
sure.
which
He may
anybody,
meet with the primary early and then.
Well, if we let Jeff know, he can,
You know what I'm saying? Unless, do you all have presentations?
We do. I don't remember what he has where. I know he was working on mine today because I've got several obligations that day. There's 2 retreats that day. And we have somebody from out of town coming to present the new Exact Path program. So he was actually talking about it today, but I think he will definitely work with whatever this committee needs as well.
I do too.
I really do.
Without cutting myself short.
I'm really
we
worried.
can, we can meet earlier. I mean, I don't have a problem meeting earlier. I mean, it's up to you guys. I mean,
Are y'all set on Wednesday, what about Thursday?
what's that?
Thursday, she said about
So are y'all set on when? Does it need to be Wednesday for any particular reason? What about Thursday?
I'm
when
set
she
on
doesn't?
Wednesday.
We're
Unless
leaving
they can meet
time.
without me after Thursday, but I'll be tied
Okay.
up Wednesday, Thursday.
It needs to be Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
It needs to be Wednesday morning.
So that needs to be posted tonight,
Same thing.
Valerie, because
I'm fine with that.
tomorrow morning's gonna be too late.
If everybody else is.
That 7:30 is fine, I'm telling you, we've got, it's an hour before and then,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? 7:30.
7:30 here.
Yeah, we want fresh sandwiches.
July 19th, 7:30, Board of Education.
I'm concerned that I can't find that ranking scale. Can you guys create one? I think it was quite simple, as in an excellent.
1, 2, 3.
I do, but then the guy that was with us, Mr. Oder, he would say, why? Why did you get that 4? Why, kind of like a rubric.
Excellent, poor, and good.
Yes, and then we had a chart. You remember that we had to put everything on a chart, and then we had to, I mean, even so far as, okay, here's this number of candidates. What'd you give him? What'd you give? What'd you give? What'd you give? And kind of like, I don't know if it was that exact process, but it was something like that.
You know what? I wonder if,
I think I got scared and gave him all of my stuff back.
yeah, well, I'm just
Because of
thinking if
confidentiality.
Miss Robinson or Mr. Patino down in Ford County doesn't have something that they just used. Mrs. Robinson's a school chair down there.
I can call Mr. Patino tonight.
Yeah, see if they have something that's 1 through 3 or 1 through 5.
I will.
And if not, I'll try to throw something together from another district or.
I even wonder how much is on the internet about it.
I'm sure there's
Yeah.
many.
Or we did say that we want to meet here.
I'm
Hey,
involved
hey.
in WR, so.
Mine too.
I'll meet wherever anybody wants to meet.
I can meet wherever, I just, I don't know.
You're ready for that.
You want to meet at my office? Is that neutral for everybody? And what did you have in mind? Did you want to meet at WR? We can meet at
It
WR.
doesn't have to be WR, there's some traffic there, I'm just trying to avoid some traffic, if that makes sense. I just relieves any kind of pressure that you,
I want you to be under pressure.
no pressure. That's why I'm asking for breakfast sandwiches. I'm not pressured.
Just so you know, he brought us McFlurries during our time.
Now, Floyd probably hasn't got anything for you because we haven't had our first meeting with, so we're.
They just did the interim, so
They're just doing the
therefore-
interim.
Right.
So that process will be after Christmas, so we haven't even established their criteria yet.
I'm thinking when I talked to Ms. Robinson, they might have had something in place for the interim.
For the interim, okay,
Yes.
yeah. I left that meeting that night and they were still in session and they were discussing what to look for, so you're probably right.
Okay.
Any other questions for me about the legalities of what is required or anything that I can answer? Seems like you're down to local specifics now about the logistics and how that's going to take place as a local steer.
I think, sounds like we'll be meeting at WR Castle at 7:30.
There's traffic there. I'm not saying that's the place that you want to be, but,
And what about a location in WR? I mean, if it's retreat, will places be, would there be a place to meet?
I'll tell you what, why don't y'all meet down here? The parking lot out back is always empty that time of day. Just pull right down in here, and then after you get done, you can just go on. It'd be easy in and out.
That'll be easy for Val too.
Yes. This is a big one.
warmer the closer. I was thinking high school library, something like that, that had less people in and out.
Well, that, no one should be, I mean, we could put this and nobody else would be in
Nobody
here.
else
right,
would
schedule, so, you know. I would-
Central office help don't come in till 10 anyhow, do they?
That's right, that's right. Yeah, and, well, right now, we're a lean group anyway, so.
Yeah. That's good.
So that, I don't think that shouldn't be too much of an issue.
So plan on 7:30, and we'll plan on an hour, is that what we're thinking, or less?
60 or less, I think.
Okay. And our plans are to elect a chair and to look at the applicants and
Develop the
have our
criteria.
scale.
A scale,
Finalize your scale.
First thing, first
Yeah,
thing.
Chair.
criteria and.
scale,
Our scale.
future meeting dates.
And
And
then look at whatever applicants are in at that time. You might get another
Qualifications.
or two.
Yeah, in this employment opportunities link where you put your applications in, it looks rather user-friendly. I've not ran applications off of it yet, but it's like, it houses the application and then other documents. So I would assume that I would pull all of that off.
Yeah.
Give one copy to Valerie and then let her make the 6 from there.
Yeah, and
Just really anything.
you need to take a little bit of a time to make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
I do wanna do that.
Because if it has just other information or whatever you said, then that's up to the applicant on their opinion what they want you to see.
I think that's why I'm asking that question,
Yeah.
because you have your basic application, but then you have a place to download
Yeah,
other
so you
documents.
probably need to take 5 or 10 minutes to look at things that's important to you in an application. Do you want to look at letters of reference? Do you want to look at a resume? Do you want to look at a resume and an application? Do you want to look at certification? All those things. Make a list of those documents that you would want to see. And then when you go to that applicant file, see if all that's in there. And if it's not, then you can ask the applicant for that or choose to do whatever you want to. When the KSBA does a search, there's like 5 criteria that each applicant has to submit. And if they don't do all 5, it's an incomplete application and that name is not even presented to them.
And so to be fair to all, you would want to be looking at the same things
Exactly.
from all of them.
The
I can
rest
see
is
that.
just fluff.
It is.
And we're gonna know these people, anyway, I mean, these are,
Hopefully.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
we're gonna know these people. The one we choose.
Yeah.
Good.
There you go.
All right. If that's it for me, you can discuss anything you want to of a specific nature, but I think all the general information has been provided. So if you have nothing else, I'll be on the way.
Thank you. for
Thank you.
Appreciate
We appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you, you have a safe trip back.
See you later.
Take care. Thanks for your information.
Wednesday, 19th,
7:30, is it here?
board office.
Right here.
So we're going to table the agenda item 3, election chair, to the next meeting. Do we typically do a motion in a regular meeting? Do we typically do a motion to table or do we?
For today? Or,
I mean, in a regular meeting?
Yes, you do.
yes.
I was thinking we did a
Motion
motion.
to table the nomination of a chairman to the next meeting.
Let's see.
Motion for the meeting on the 19th, 7:30.
I make a motion that we have a meeting on the 19th at 7:30 here.
Second.
do we want to go ahead and get an idea
Anybody
of
oppose
another
that?
meeting?
Yeah.
Is there any
All in
opposition
favor?
to that? That's probably, we don't have a chairman yet, it's hard to.
Yeah, it's, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Now, Jeanette, what were you saying?
Is it possible to go ahead and look at our dates?
Future dates?
Yes, because he's already telling us that.
Do we need to make a motion to review a scoring rubric for the superintendent screening process for next meeting?
Not tonight because it's not on the
It'll just be
agenda.
on the agenda, won't it?
So it can be on the agenda that's posted 24 hours. in
Right,
advance.
I'll put it, here's what I'm gonna do, y'all tell me. We're gonna do election of chairman, we're gonna do approve a rating scale. We're going to, what about the, making a list of qualifications or criteria, does that need to be on there? Do y'all want that on there?
That was part of the scale, wasn't it?
Right, okay, that's part of
You
that.
might want to write that as discuss and create the scale,
Okay,
and that would encompass
okay.
the whole thing.
And then we'll go into, then you guys will go into executive session to review applications.
Well, they have to be assigned the code names, so,
You will do that.
no, not with that many, but you would do that in the closed session, would you not?
Okay. And question, Val, on the qualifications, could we put just generic qualifications? And then if anybody wants to add to it, that can just be the thought
That's
provoker.
basically what he did. He said like background, leadership role.
Yeah, leadership, background,
Experience.
kid positive, and
Accomplishments.
finance would be a big one, I think. But if you put 6 or 7 things on there, and then that might trigger somebody else to think of something else, where we just might approve as a committee, just the stuff you put on there. And I'll say one thing based on what we did the last time, it's amazing on a resume that what you'll get versus what you get when you Google somebody. One of our top candidates the last time, until we Googled, it wasn't good, and it wasn't anybody from our area. But
Anything looks good on paper, you can have
if
anything.
you just looked at the resume, the guy was there
He
ready
was-
to go.
He fooled us all, he was one of all of our top candidates.
He superseded everybody until we Googled him. It was interesting.
Valerie, I wrote down, as Mr. Hutchison was talking earlier, the 5 criteria, but I think I don't know if you do, but that might help us. We got this.
Time frame though, when you would not be able to meet with us, can you kind of give us?
Oh, if you want to look at future dates, how about, if we went on the 18th, and then 19th, I mean, there'd be no sense in doing the rest of that week. I'm thinking the morning of the 24th, it would be a thought process in case there's anything that comes up the day of the meeting, since you'll be here already, won't you, Val?
Yeah.
Okay. And then,
12:01 on the 31st, or the 29th, or 30th, I mean.
pizza. Or we could even, because we'll have a special call meeting an hour after we meet. If we meet on the 30th, we'll have an hour after. If we meet on the 31st in the morning, we'll have a school board meeting an hour after. I just think the sooner we can make a decision, the better for everybody. Even if we made it, I don't want to interfere with anybody's church time, and I know it's a tough day for everybody, but I think the board would even get together to bring some resolution to this. But we have a meeting as a committee here. I'd love to do it for you on the 31st, whether it be 7:30, and then have a school board meeting at 9 o'clock.
You want it on Monday, the 31st?
To me, if that took place on the 30th, the 31st, you could give that person the day with Mr. South.
Correct. And I just didn't know what everybody thought
I think
about the 30th.
As a church church goer, you could even do that early afternoon.
2 o'clock,
Yeah.
2:30? Okay. And then we hit the criteria after the closing date, and I can bring the fried chicken.
Wow.
Oh, he's impressive.
So-
isn't he?
So can we shoot for like 8 o'clock or something on the 24th, or would
Can we do it earlier?
Huh?
Can we do it
We
earlier?
can do it anytime you want.
I just like maybe 7,
You've got
because
the.
I've got a new person starting that morning.
That's fine.
7
And,
o'clock.
That'll work out
And-
better too, because we usually have Monday morning meetings down here,
Mhm.
and we usually start those, 8:30, 9? So
Mhm.
we would have that well out of the way.
and you know what else? If we don't have any applicants between the 19th and the 24th, our meeting will be very short, 15 minutes.
What about later in that week,
Uh,
seeing as people might wait to the last minute?
I tell you what, we can wait until the 26th.
But if we're gonna meet on the 30th anyways, or we were gonna make the official recommendations 12:01 or whatever time on the 30th there, 2 o'clock, is what our plan was, right? So we could, any of them that we hadn't screened by the 24th, we could screen on the 30th, right?
But if we waited a little bit later in the week, it might give,
The third.
there might be another 1 or 2 that we might be able to go ahead
They
and address
have to
earlier.
be in on the 29th, correct? Because
Right.
that will be 30 days posting.
11:59.
If you've got 3 right now, I think that's what you'll have until probably the 28th, 29th. And then you'll probably get, if there's gonna be anybody else, I think that's when they'll apply.
I agree.
So,
Unless they get wind
Yeah.
that you guys are reading.
Mhm.
Unless we're doing what?
Unless they find out that you guys have already started
Started
looking at
Okay.
the
rating.
process, then they may want to go ahead and put theirs in.
And then two, if somebody knows that 3 people have already applied, I'm not gonna apply because 4 superheroes already applied, I'm not in there. It might discourage people from applying.
Does anyone know if there's like some great influx of applications? Trying to be notified and say, hey.
Can we not meet in an afternoon where she's out
I
of
don't
the
know
office?
how many.
I know earlier is better.
So we're looking at 7 o'clock on the 24th, a.m., and then maybe 2 o'clock on the 30th.
2:30.
Because I think what we'll do is have our board meeting on Sunday.
Like at whatever,
4
4 o'clock.
Yep.
Did y'all say 4 o'clock?
Yes, ma'am.
that's at 2.
2 o'clock.
2
for our
o'clock
meeting,
for-
4 o'clock.
She's a fucker.
What, imagine
usually-
that at 2
she-
o'clock,
she
there's no
usually
more
waits about-
applications to come in. Imagine a 2-hour wait for 4 o'clock, but more time to discuss
Yeah.
your decisions.
Yeah, you don't have to be rushed.
That's right. 2 to 4 is probably very safe, rather than just giving yourself an hour.
And we will have to be present at that.
No, actually not.
You won't, you could make a recommendation, and one of you, or the chairperson, whoever, could make that official presentation to the board.
The entire committee doesn't have to be there, but the entire committee can be there.
Enough.
We work, because we worked hard and we all
Well,
were
one
there.
doesn't need to take the hit or the, hit or the fall or the glory.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay, if I can just go over this. Our next meeting's gonna be 7:30 a.m. on July the 19th here at the Board of Education. And then after that, we're gonna have a 7 a.m. on July the 24th here as well. And then we've got a 2 o'clock on Sunday, July the 30th here. And a special called Johnson County Board of Education meeting at 4 o'clock on Sunday.
And by chance, Val, if you find out on the 5th, 6th, or 7th, that you all of a sudden got 10 applications in a matter of 48 hours, we can always have a meeting on the 28th or 29th
Absolutely.
to go over
Yes.
those. I mean, if
Absolutely.
we're talking,
Just need
double
24-hour notice.
okay. And
Double
somebody
digits,
will be
yes.
in touch with you, I'm sure.
I'll start in the morning opening those up because there might be a lot in those documents that I don't know about.
Is that all we have to discuss? Anybody have anything else you can think of? I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you all for coming out.